all right to begin the meeting? We're live streamed. There it is.
Now you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then. With that, I call the September 1st, 2021 meeting of the Hillsborough Historic District Commission to order. Stephanie, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Jill Heilman.
Present.
Vice Chair Virginia Smith.
Present.
Eric Altman.
Present.
Candace Cobb.
Present.
Max Dowdle is not here yet, but hopefully he'll join us. Megan Kimball cannot be here tonight. And Will Spoon.
Present.
And we do have a quorum with 5.
Thank you. All right, then. I'm going to share the mission statement, and then I'm going to jump to a couple of housekeeping items, introductions, et cetera, and then we'll continue with the agenda. So the mission of the Hillsborough Historic District Commission is to identify, protect, and preserve Hillsborough's architectural resources and to educate the public about those resources and preservation in general. The Hillsborough Historic District presents a visual history of Hillsborough's development from the 1700s to the 1960s. In 1973, the town chose to respect that history through the passage of the Preservation Ordinance, creating the Historic District. All right. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to make sure everyone is introduced here and to share a little bit about the transition plans for staff report for this board, as everyone may not be familiar with Stephanie. But so let me just share that we have Bob Hornick, our lawyer, here with us tonight. And by phone, we have Allison Blanton from Hill Studio. She's available to answer questions if the board should have any as we work through this final process for the design standards. And then Stephanie, as I understand it, will provide staff support for this board in terms of the meetings, the community interface for, COAs, as well as the staff reports that come to the board. Justin also had minor works that are involved with the Historic District Commission. And my understanding is Shannon Campbell will be covering the minor works for the interim period. And Margaret, I was told you were going to be on the enforcement front. So I think those are the elements of the job that we interface with Justin about. Clearly, there were many other things Justin did, and the town has worked on transition responsibilities there that I'm not privy to or not going to cover because they're not relevant to the Historic District Commission. But that is the plan for transition at this time. And the town is moving quickly. Oh, there's Max. Thank you for joining. The town hopes to able to rapidly fill Justin's position because we all recognize that everybody already had a full plate and this will be a challenging interim period to keep the work moving. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Stephanie, for taking in. For those of you who haven't perhaps been on the board or around as long as some of us old dogs, Stephanie supported the Historic District Commission up until about 5 or 6 years ago for a very long time. So it is with that history that she was perhaps saddled with doing it again. But we're very fortunate to have her because she is very experienced and does have a good degree of knowledge in this area. So thank you, Stephanie. So I want to go through a bit. We have new members. We covered that last week. And I just want to also share that Stephanie will be taking care of helping onboard those staff, and I've offered to help support that as well, so that those two new members will be joining you in October, as Candace and I will be rolling off. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Allison Blanton with us. She's indicated by the telephone, and she is from Hill Studio. You met her last week. She and Kate gave a presentation of the work they had done. She's again here with us to go through the any questions we might have on these standards. So with that, let me move on to agenda items. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Please indicate by raising your hand or speaking up now. None are noted. Okay, then, moving on to the minutes of the August 4th meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes? I'm not seeing anyone speaking. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Was that Virginia? I think.
It was Candace.
Candace, I thought it sounded like her voice, but I thought I saw Virginia's mouth move, so I was
Well, I'll
confused.
second it.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. With that, we will go through the roll call vote. So all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, indicate by stating aye. Virginia,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Will,
Aye.
Max,
Aye.
Candace,
Aye.
Jill, aye. Motion carries 6-0. So with that, I'll move on to item number 5 on the agenda, old business. From the minutes, there were a couple of items that were identified for discussion at this meeting with respect to guideline changes. And if you will, we'll cover those items as part of the proposal process a bit later in the meeting. I do just want to take this opportunity to remind the members that you have received emails for CLG training. To date, there are 3 videos that have been issued by the state. I've asked how many there will be, and I don't have the answer to that yet. But we have an obligation for members to be trained on a regular basis, and that training that you're receiving allows us to meet that obligation. You need to review the video and submit a synopsis/summary of those videos to Christy Brantley. You can bundle them all together in one or submit them as you get them as you go along, but can I remind you all to complete that responsibility to keep this board in compliance.
And I would just ask if, I'm not exactly sure who's going to be preparing the CLG report this year. It's an annual report that goes in, but if you guys could just send me an email if you do the training so I can keep track. Hopefully we'll have a new staff member fairly soon to support this board, but I just want to make sure I keep track of everything in the meantime. So please just let me know if you complete the training.
So send your synopsis to Christy and copy Stephanie. Okay. Any other old business? Okay. I don't see anyone mentioning that, so we'll move on to the new business, which our business this evening is, our objective is to identify any final changes to the design standards and if they're acceptable to everyone to adopt those such standards. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge again the work of Hill Studio, Allison, Kate, and Katie, town staff, Justin, Shannon, Stephanie, all contribute to that, as well as Margaret and Candace. Thank you again for the superb pictures that really improved the caliber of that document. But last but not least, I want to thank all the board members for their thoughtful review and comments of these drafts. It's been a lot of work, but I appreciate everyone's efforts. So at last month's meeting, or the minutes, you can see that Hill Studio reviewed the objectives of this project. And I just want to review again those real quickly and add a bit more specificity to what this design standard update was to accomplish, because I want to be sure everyone feels that those objectives were met. So they were asked to comprehensively revise and update the standards to address inconsistencies, issues, and deficiencies that we as a board had collected and asked them to address. We wanted to create a much more user-friendly document in a digital medium that was rich in content as well as illustrations. We wanted to provide the commission with updated standards to support consistent and defensible decisions as required by the state statute 160D. And we wanted to create a document that was easy to update for the town moving forward. Specifically, we asked that these standards address for some particular areas that we had noticed we felt we needed to be more current with respect to. And that included sustainable energy, green technologies, disaster preparedness, infill development. We wanted to clarify commercial and residential buildings and how the standards would apply to each type. We wanted to incorporate mixed use, multifamily, and accessory dwelling units in our standards. We had a compatibility matrix, but we wanted to incorporate that information within the standards themselves instead of living as a secondary document. And then we also felt we should address parks, cemeteries, and public spaces, all things which we had encountered applications on in the past, but didn't always have standards, clear standards to apply. The town also sought input from the community via survey early in the process. We asked them about those objectives, and those responses were shared with Hill Studio, and they were reviewed throughout the process by Justin and I to confirm that the standards that we were doing were addressing community feedback. So I just want to stop here and check in. Do the board members feel that these objectives have been met with the document that they've reviewed? I know that we're going to be discussing some potential wording changes here and there, but are there any significant concerns that we should identify now? If so, would you indicate by raising your hand and speaking?
Something I'm curious about.
Certainly.
Why not ask now? So in the future, if one of us, not me, because I'm not going to be here much longer, but if somebody needs to make a change or wants to have a change made, and we know the document can be updated in-house here, what's the process for that? Does that need to be approved by the whole commission or what?
Yeah, well, how we have been handling those, Virginia, is that if the board agrees that there is wording or a minor work we want to change or add, or a new standard or revise a standard, if the board proposes that standard be revised and adopts that standard, by a vote, then the document would be updated to reflect that. If you look at our present document, you'll see that it was updated every year from 2007 on. So that would continue. It's just that document was very challenging to change, and we hope this one will not be.
Yeah, really. I hope not too.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Hey, Jill, it's Will. I'm sorry, I missed last month, I think, and I haven't been following a lot that close, but did we do the second round of public comment on the final draft? And so we did the initial one, and then you got like a final review out there for people to take a look at?
But then we put the August, what I call the July version. The July 30th version was also made available for the public to comment on. And there were some comments, many of them were tangential.
And was there any kind of response or acknowledgement of the disposition of their comments, so people weren't left wondering, hey, why did I comment if it was just ignored?
We have talked about that in the small group, and we want to come back to that at the end of the action. There were some actions that the small group had agreed we would attempt to take on. But since 2 of the 3 people of the small group will not be here any longer, and the third one is not here tonight, I think that's something that the board needs to talk about. What were some of the follow-up actions that we wanted to talk once this document was issued? Yeah, am I with you?
Well, no, I hear what you're saying, but I kind of not having kind of fell behind on the public outreach. I want to know that we were being responsive to the public before we approve it. I personally do.
Well, the survey responses were anonymous.
Okay.
So we cannot respond to individuals.
But we can't say, like, make a list, like what we heard, what we did. That's how I've done this in the past on other types of documents.
well, let me just jump ahead. So what we had talked about doing as a small group at the beginning was when these standards were adopted, that we would try to issue some FAQs to clarify areas that were confusing. You know, many of the comments related to things that are town ordinances, not HDC requirements. So we can clarify that. We talked about, you know, the tree board has made some videos to kind of talk about the work was done. So we had thought that as part of the launch, if you will, of this thing, that we would try to address some of those types of questions, comments, and newness, if you will, by some of those actions moving forward.
Okay. And not having seen the public comments, I mean, we didn't get like dozens of people saying one thing and we're just ignoring that. Like, I don't want to set up a furious situation.
I think that we can't even tell in the way the survey was administered if we have one person that says the same thing repeatedly, or if it was multiple people that said a similar theme. Okay. So that was from the first survey. So the first survey did indicate, and Justin and I have checked those survey results as we went along, Will, that, you know, they were pretty much aligned to what we wanted. They wanted a more user-friendly document. They wanted green energy address. And if you give me just a second, those were the infill development and how they could use alternative materials. Those were the ones that had of the objectives we gave them, those were the top three. We asked them to indicate their top three, and those 4 items came out as the most frequently responded. The rest of the items were much less, of much less interest, shall we say.
That was the first round of comments, not the.
Yeah, the second one, I have to say, when we gave them a sort of a free form, those comments were of minimal use. Candace, I think you saw them. I'm trying not to divulge the lack of appropriateness of some.
Oh, Lord.
They weren't terribly relevant.
Yes.
Okay, but there's nothing that came in that's going to catch the town off guard if we approve we're not like approving these in the face of a bunch of complaints on the final revision or final review.
I don't think that any of the comments were specific enough. When we come to the proposal, we'll talk a little bit more about sustainability and energy. Okay. That's something we want to be sure we've addressed, and we'll come a little bit more into that. And we'll talk about what we've done and where we are. But yeah, Stephanie.
It may be helpful to get a copy of the public comments that you have and just save it in the project file. And one way we may be able to address Will's question is for staff to just go through and like right next to the comment, not HTC purview, or, you know, not relevant, like, you know, and then for the ones that were addressed, we could just put in a column addressed. That's something that we could work on if that would be helpful. I can't promise that it's going to get done quickly, but we could certainly save a copy of that in the project file if you would like.
I've done that on the first one. I think Candace and Megan and I went through those in detail, and I kind of marked those up. But a lot of it, I think one of my big takeaways in the comments is there's really a gap in education and what is an HDC and what does it do and what is contributing and why can't I make any change I want? And there is a whole section of comments that deal with that we were hoping that FAQ and, you know, some video and some other kind of continuing education might help to address.
Okay, great. I
Okay.
just wanted to, I have not followed that close. I wanted to make sure that the people that have
Yeah.
were being real responsive to the public. So
Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
think we've tried to address those concerns, and we can spend a little more time one by one as we go through them, Will. But I can't, if someone sent an email to Justin, he responded to the email directly. But most from the survey, we can't respond. We don't know.
Okay.
So thank you for raising that. And Stephanie, I'll make a note that we may want to see what we can do about the survey results. I mean, in the final survey, one of the comments was about flyers on telephone poles. You know, it's.
That's one of my pet peeves too, actually.
Yeah, well, but it's not something that HTC can control. So
They're temporary.
it's
They're
you know,
temporary.
pardon?
They're temporary.
Yes, they're temporary. They're not us. Okay. So I want to go back to the question because I just want to be sure that the board feels like the objectives of the project in this design standard document we're there. We have met those. We need to still look at the document a little bit more, but if there are any significant concerns, I want to be sure that we have those. And what I'm hearing is about public response and an action plan to address public response. Okay, I'm noting that there are none. Okay, and so another objective of Justin's was to update the website for the Historic District Commission to make it more user-friendly to go along with this digital document. Because of Justin's move to a new position, that activity will be tabled until the time that the town has a new planner permanently in place to support the HDC. And then that website can get updated.
We will, of course, post the new design standards once you approve them on the website so that the updated document's available for the public.
Right. But he had some objectives, not all of which I am perhaps aware of, but things that he just wanted to do to overall make that website a bit more accessible. And that will wait until there's a new one.
Stephanie, will the old guidelines come down at the same time you do that?
Yes, of course, we'll retain copies of the old guidelines, but we'll take them off the website just to reduce confusion.
It'd be terribly confusing. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So in just a bit, we're going to review the wording changes that may affect the 27 August document that you had access to and have reviewed in the last few days. But before I do that, I just want to take a couple of minutes and digress about editorial issues. This document has typos, perhaps still some subject verb agreement, maybe widow orphan, line break issues. The Public Information Office has kindly agreed to take a review of the final version of this document and address those kind of editorial issues for us. So before it goes live on the website, the Public Information Office will conduct that review. All of those, perhaps with the exception of widow orphan, but many of the editorial comments that were made on the July 30th version have been addressed in this version. But the priority was content, so some may still be outstanding.
That's excellent news.
Yes, and we're very grateful to the Public Information Office for taking such a project on. We're very fortunate that they've agreed to do that. In addition, Justin had asked Hill Studio to conduct a review to assure that the document was gender neutral, and they did undertake that review, but we're going to ask the Public Information Office to keep keep their eyes open and to assure that this document is gender neutral as well as part of our equity and inclusion principles. So is that a approach for the editorial issues? Is everyone satisfied with that? Again, indicate if you have a concern or if we're not covering something you are concerned about. Okay. Not seeing any concerns. I also want to share that Hill Studio has a couple of deliverables left. And again, part of the reason I'm doing this is I'm rolling off the board. But they are going to provide all of the graphics in the document will be provided to the town in a folder so that those can be kept and available for updates. And they also have to provide some training to the town staff on how to update this document. And that's something I think you guys are aiming to do, Allison, what, by the end of September?
Yes.
Yeah. Allison and I spoke earlier today, and as in reviewing this document, I've identified 2 graphics that would benefit from being revised. So before we get that final set of graphics, they're going to fix those up, and we would like to be able to drop those graphics in the final version. To make you aware of what those are, on page 46, there's a graphic of a storefront. Someone made a comment to this respect earlier about the colors, the trim colors, and the not being very clearly differentiated in that graphic. So they're going to work on that and provide that for the final version here in a few days, hopefully. And then on page 72 in the lower left-hand corner, there's a caption that says how commercial buildings should kind of form a street wall. They shouldn't recede or protrude. And there's an example of a potential building receding but not protruding, and they've agreed to update that to align to the caption as well. And those things, Allison, you thought you would be able to do rather quickly.
Yes,
Correct.
I'm still waiting to get a specific date back for you, but I will let you know.
Okay. Any questions regarding that? Okay, I don't see any. So then I just want to move on to the process that has been followed since the previous draft on the 30th July, and that the actions that were taken with respect to that draft and the draft that we received on the 27th of August, again, to make sure the board is completely aware. The 30th of July draft had nearly 500 comments from the board, and those were reviewed and addressed by Hill Studio. When they were questions, they reached out to Justin or to Justin and I to clarify. I reviewed the final document from the 27th against those comments, and I believe that those comments were comprehensively addressed in this 27th of August version. I'm sure many of you, as you reviewed it, were also looking to see that your comments were addressed. So with the exception of those that are in the proposal we're going to talk about tonight, I believe that those were addressed. I paid particular attention to the comments that surrounded things like suggesting it should be should the recommendation be a standard or the standard or recommendation, and I checked those comprehensively as I went through, and those appear to have all been changed as the comments asked. So some other things that were done in this final version, you'll see we finally got the information to update the history of Hillsborough. And so it's more inclusive, including some history on African-American contributions, as well as that of females that was not present in the 30 July version. So there were comments that came in outside of the document. They came from either the community members or things that they just came in and we were trying to resolve those. So for example, Will, your language around the trees, Justin and I worked with you to get something that you agreed to on that language. Hopefully that's in the proposal for review and adoption tonight if you're agreed to, but that was outside of that language was outside of the comments. So that's something we're going to talk about tonight. I've mentioned that if they're unclear or discordant, one person thought one thing, one person thought another, we've addressed those. Or the small group, which was Megan, Candace, and I, reviewed that, particularly in section 5, there was a lot of comments about how to treat new construction in a historic district. And there was a proposal agreed to by those of us, and that was put forward to Hill Studio, and section 5 reflects that proposal, to my belief. We talked a little bit earlier about the community comments. Justin and I reviewed those, and if they're a substantive nature, we tried to provide wording language to Hill Studio to incorporate those. And there's probably some of those that we want to talk about tonight, just still trying to tweak that language a bit around sustainability and windows, 2 of our continual challenges. So Justin updated the compatibility table to reflect the use of Trex and anything else that he felt he needed to do. So that version of the table is what appears in this final draft of the standards. And I reorganized the minor works. I did not change any minor works, and if there are any changes to minor works, they are in the proposal you're going to review tonight. But I did reorganize them to align to the organization of this document. So windows and doors were separated, utilities was separated from sustainability, I think it was. So all of those items were in the minor works are aligned and are mapped to the document. So I hope that's clear. And then, I also conducted a review. I also looked at all of the minor works as they have been, and I looked at the standards for the same section. And if there was any appearance where the minor work and the new language in the standard did not appear to be consistent or agree in some way, I flagged those in the proposal for us to look at tonight. So to see what we want to do. I don't think they're very substantive, but you all have to take a look at those and see. So wanted to be sure that the minor works were not out of step with the standards as they're currently written. And then SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, did review the 30th of July document, and they did provide, it's raining really hard here now, so I'm outside. I hope you can hear me okay. Anyway, they provided comments on that document, and those comments were incorporated into the final version as well. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions about what has happened since July the 30th, either for the comments that were addressed in that document and were turned over to Hill Studio on the 9th of August, or that have been identified in reviews that I'm aware of, which are mostly my reviews, on the 27th of August.
Hey, Jill, it's Will. So the current thing that you have in the document you sent out today regarding the trees, that's the new language that Justin came up with. But I don't want to look like I was, sitting on my duff. I put versions of those comments in for like a year and a half now, and into the first spreadsheet of what you'd like to see changed. I put those versions of what I'd like to see changed into the Adobe thing. So I tried many times to get it changed through the normal process, and then finally Justin wrote that one thing that he wrote, and that's how I got outside of the official editing process.
You had the comments about it in the document. I think what I'm trying to say, to be clear to everyone, is you've raised that multiple times. what we did outside the document was agree with you exact language we would now put into the consideration section, rather than leave that in the hands of Hill Studio to address. So that's what we'll review tonight. And yes, you have raised it multiple times and we keep massaging it, but I think we finally have it, hopefully, in a good spot.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. I just want to pause there again. Will's raised a comment. Are there any other comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. And the one thing that was raised in the minutes of the last meeting was about whether we wanted to revise the minor work with respect to Trex on decks to allow for it to be, the way the minutes are worded up, are should Trex be allowed to be the rail? And so we need to talk about that for just a few minutes. I'm not sure if that, the way the language is, and I frankly don't remember, were we talking about, do we want to allow Trex to be just the rail, or do we want it to allow to be the, I'm not sure if rail is meant to be just the top border, or if it's also meant to be the post, the banisters, if you will. But right now, that question in the minutes was deferred to this meeting. And so we need to decide how we want to handle Trex. Currently, the minor work wording that you'll see tonight only allows it for the flooring.
Hey, Jill, what point, so like a Trex 4x4 that would be your corner rail, or a 6x6, that's, I've only said like a couple times, so I don't think that, we're not going to encounter that very much. It's like a Trex framing timber. The main question is going to be your top rail and your decking. So I don't think you have to worry about if someone's going to do pickets or frame with Trex.
Yeah, if you only do the top rail, then you'll have Trex flooring, wood pickets, and a Trex rail, or maybe cable or whatever else they want to do for their their sides. But I'm just trying to, what does the board propose with respect to the use of Trex on decks? Very hard to say that without making, sounds like.
Well, I'm already talking, and I said it last time too, but my personal opinion is that it's better to allow it for the rails also, so that you get even fading with the sun, even weathering, because I think otherwise you're going to have twisting and cracking wooden rails and maybe Trex decking that's looks different and better than those rails. But I've done it a couple of times both ways on different houses, and I've seen how they both kind of weather, and it's not the same. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Jill, can I jump in? I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say anything or not, but Ms. Allison, I might recommend y'all use the word, composite materials instead of specific Trex. And I do know there's some, I think it's called starts with an A, like Trex.
Yeah.
Yes, that does make the pickets and things like that.
Allison, we have talked about that, and I think the board members were comfortable with Trex, but we have still, in our compatibility matrix, we're saying we're not, we weren't comfortable with composite. So we are being very specific as the brand here because of what Trex is.
Okay.
It's more green. It's produced, I think, in a more green fashion, if I'm right. Stephanie?
Yeah, so Trex is a recycled plastic product, but there's a lot of plastic products that are not recycled, like PVC products that people will ask for. And I just want to make sure with Bob that this board can differentiate a brand or type of plastic being appropriate over another type of plastic, because I guarantee the question will come up with homeowners.
And I think you can, because of the green reasoning behind it. Now, if you have other kinds of composites that are have the same history, the same greenness, then maybe you have a question to ask. But, right now, if the real differentiating factor is that Trex is made of recyclable stuff and the other materials that we're aware of are not, I think that's a legitimate distinction.
Thank you.
Well, does that mean somebody needs to go and find out what all the other similar products are and what their greenness is?
No, they can come before my feeling is they can come before the board with an argument as to why they should be able to use that product, and the board can assess then if it meets the standard that you've set.
Okay.
I agree.
Because a lot of it is just PVC, and I don't think we want to go down that road of
No, please.
PVC everywhere, which is why we've been very specific and used specific about the word Trex.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So how does the board feel about rails also being allowed to be Trex? And I don't know, and I'm fine. I don't.
I
Do
feel
we
good
have
about it.
Do we have a sense of what other historic district commissions are doing with tracks right now?
I don't, but Allison may be better, may have a better global view than I do.
I do think Roanoke is now allowing it on new decks, which are typically in the back. Certifies not allowing it to replace like the traditional tug and groove flooring on a porch, on the front porch. And that's kind of where City of Roanoke is.
And that's where we were too. We were allowing it for decks, but not for porch flooring. Is what was the decision that we made. So now the question tonight is really rails on decks. Can they be Trex?
Should it be case by case?
Could be. And you're suggesting that because, what are you thinking, Candace?
I liked what Will said about how the railing and the floor would weather similarly, but I really don't like the idea of using it on rails. So case by case was my compromise.
Okay.
What if it's in the back of the house?
Well, that's primarily where we say decks must be,
Yeah.
Well,
with
yeah.
rare exceptions, or they have to come before the board. The couple that screen porches and all that have to go on sides.
I mean, it's really all based off of visibility from the street. And since we're saying just back porches, maybe case by case is better, because then we get into this weird thing on a corner house, like, is this my backyard or my side yard or my front yard? So, and what we care about is what it looks like from the street. Like, I don't care what someone standing on their own back porch looks around and sees that much. So I'm actually fine with case by case if that's something we could do.
That works for me, case by case.
All right. Then.
You have to make sure that you're not being arbitrary when you say yes in one case and no in another case. I mean, if the standard's supposed to be congruity with the district, I mean, just keep in mind that you have to be consistent. And if you're going to treat similar situations differently, you better be able to explain why. And it's not
May I
just
ask
because
a question? Oh, sorry.
and not just because I like it in the back or I like it in that corner or whatever. You've got to be more than personal preference.
Right now, I guess what I'm wondering is, right now, this is within the minor works language. That's the only place it appears. And the language is as follows, and you can find this in your in the final document back there on page 150 or something, but it's called ordinary maintenance and repair. And based on what we said before was that you could replace the wood of a decking with wood, or you could replace the wood of a decking with Trex. So it reads, replacement of deck flooring with wood or with Trex on decks that are beyond the front line of the primary structure. Trex cannot be used for porch flooring and cannot be used for porch deck or walkway railings and posts. That was where we left it at the last meeting. So if we need to, that's what I'm seeking to understand. Are we ready to change it for railings, or do you want to take this up at a future meeting when you've thought about it some more?
I'd rather not change that. I like it the way it is.
Okay. I don't know where everyone else is, but if someone wants to change it, I need a motion to change it.
Could we include some, like one sentence that says all reasonable effort will be made to make Trex and natural wood visibly similar or something, just so we don't get into the thing that I described where they age differently and they get weird looking?
Yeah, but how can we say that if they age differently?
I mean, it's like we speak to a lot of different general maintenance type things we require.
But I'm not, tell me what you're proposing again, then, Will. I'm not quite following on what we would say about the Trex.
Just that it needs to match the wood railing as best they can, because it comes in a bunch of different colors too, and it could get tricky to even match the colors to, you know, your stains on your rails, I think.
Do we otherwise require our rails and our decks to be the same color?
No.
Maybe not.
Then to me, that's a pretty arbitrary rule then.
Yeah. I mean, often the rail is a contrasting color to the deck, so.
Right.
Or contrasting material.
Material, in this case, it would be with Trex, or it could be wires, etc. Okay, I'm going to ask one more time, give you a chance to make a motion if you want to make a motion. If not, I'm going to understand that there's no change to this minor wording as I just read it to you. I don't think.
Just to be clear, if someone wants to propose Trex for rails, they would make a COA application and come to the board. So this is really just in regards to what staff can approve. And I would advise that you leave it the way it is, because it's going to get hard for staff when someone comes in and says, I want purple Trex rails. And if it says that we can approve it, that becomes a difficult scenario. So I would advise you, as your interim person, to make it easier on the next staff person, that just require a COA application if they want to extend beyond the decking itself.
Stephanie makes an excellent point.
Yeah, so it's already case by case. It just has to come in front of the whole commission, and we'll just have to keep in mind Bob's good advice to not be arbitrary when we review them.
So then, with this conversation coming to a close, the minor works doesn't change. The compatibility matrix with respect to this item does not change. They were already updated to reflect the conversation from July or whenever we had it. I'm losing track of time here, but those I know are both there. Okay, so with that then, Margaret, would you be so kind as to share your screen with the proposal document, because I want to walk us through each of those. And then at the end of that process, if anyone else has a proposed wording change, we will come to that. So I'm just going to take these one by one. I want to draw attention to this note at the top. This document has a very specific format of introduction and considerations on the left and standards on the right, pictures. Space is limited in places. So this is the proposed wording we would go forward with, but I would like the permission of the commission that if, in order to make these changes fit in the available space, minor editing can occur to that section to allow this change. So if there's any concerns about that when we get to the end of this document, please advise. So we're going to start out, and if anyone needs to look at your document, I'm going to let you look at that yourself. I'm sorry we were only able to get this out to you today. It was quite a effort to get to this point, so I was as soon as I could get it. Thank you for enlarging that. So in the minor works table, the current wording on page 16. Now, if you remember, this minor works table is just an abbreviation to kind of help people quickly see what would be a minor work that they need to address with staff. The full language of the minor work is available in the appendix. So Will, in order to clarify, and if you'll notice that in ordinary maintenance and repair, you can remove small trees, but to remove large trees, mature trees that meet certain criteria can only be done as a minor work with a verification letter from a certified arborist. And then there would be an asterisk added because there are criteria, and those criteria can be found explicitly in the minor work. There's a footnote at the bottom of that table for all of these that say criteria. Is there any concern with that clarification in the wording from what is there currently to what is proposed? All right, I can't see everyone once I put the share screen on, so I'm counting on you to speak up. I'm going to assume that silence on each of these means agreement, and if we can move on to the next item. Margaret, thank you. On page 17, there is a flow chart of the COA process. And based on a comment, there was a change next at the end of the review. At the end of the review, we either issue a COA with conditions, we deny, or we issue a COA. Whatever we do, then the applicant may need to get additional permits. So the language there on those, both the box on the left and the box in the center, was not correct. And the proposal is to correct that language and to add an additional sentence that the applicant must obtain any required permits before work begins. And that sentence was added at the recommendation of Stephanie because she knows this is always a confusing point for community members. So we're trying to make it clearer here. Okay.
There's an extra space between before and work.
All right.
This is part of my disease, I admit.
If you want to create a list or put that on a comment document that we give to the PIO to help them out, Virginia, I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Maybe I will.
See, Jill, I would have just simply blamed on that on your conversion from Mac World to Word and
Well,
not taken.
I was going to say, if you're not, don't look at my typing. My typing's really bad. And all these hyphens are because when you bring it over, in a justified text, it creates this hyphenated word. And frankly, I just simply do not have the time or the patience to deal with all of that. So I'm relying on you guys to understand.
I'll say
Yes.
issues is misspelled.
Well, that would be my typing. Yes. Okay.
Yes,
So-
we will take care of that. We will not purposefully put a misspelled or a spacing or other error in the final document.
Right. If we could focus on the content, because as I say, I am not that kind of a editor at all. So if there's no further comments, I'm assuming that these two changes are agreed. Okay, let's move to the next page. So page 17 talks about a minor work when there are changes to a previously approved COA deemed by staff to be insubstantial or minor in nature. If you are to look at those, at that language, that minor work language, there is also a very extensive language about changes that I just wanted to be sure was called out here. So it's item number 2 in the minor works appendix under this topic, changes to a previously approved COA. So in order to do so, I've just added that they're insubstantial or minor in nature, or which meet certain criteria. So, because there are some that could also be agreed. Virginia, you still with us? Oh, you go dark there. Thought you were raising your hand.
I'm still with you. I just need to go get a little computer help.
Okay.
It's my problem, not y'all's. I'll be right back.
All right. Thank you. We're going to keep going. So if we could, again, I'm checking. I'm not seeing any concerns raised. So I'm assuming that this change is also approvable by the board. We'll move on to the next one. All right. This is one of the more substantial changes, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this one because windows was one of the areas that we got community feedback on. People want to be able to replace their windows, or people believe that they can't replace their windows. And so we're trying to spend some time here articulating how people in the consideration section, how people can replace their windows. And Stephanie and I were looking at this the other day, and I have a kind of a specific question I want to go through as well. But for the moment, Allison shared with me shortly before this meeting that in doing additional reading, she has seen that the Department of Energy reports that windows account for 10 to 25% of total air loss in residential buildings. So I would propose we make that read account for less than 25% on average of total air loss to align to the additional information Allison has found. But with that exception, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So what we're trying to say is that, the question comes in all the time about, can I replace my can I replace my windows with double pane windows? And like all questions before us, it depends. What are they? Historic windows? Are they replacement windows in a structure that's not historic? What is the situation? So we're trying to say that, the board is open to considering window replacement, but we can't commit ourselves to that until we see the application. And second of all, I would submit that the greenest choice is to make sure that the windows you have are sealed, caulked, and operating well.
Yeah, instead of throwing them in the landfill.
Instead of throwing them in the landfill, exactly. So that's what most of this wording is. The red wording here is what has been changed. And I just, so we've kind of, some of the language that was already changed before this version that you would have read is that when replacement is determined to be the best option, consider energy efficient windows. We're not requiring energy efficient windows, but we want them to, they can consider energy efficient windows, and they should be compatible with the architectural style of the building and consistent with the compatibility matrix, and you're good to go. Saw Bob nodding. All that sounds appropriate to you, Bob?
Right, I just want to clarify that, but not having energy efficient windows, if that's the only thing we don't like about the windows, that has nothing to do with congruity with the district, right?
Right.
And would not be a basis for denial.
No, but because a lot of the community response is to encourage they want us to encourage window replacement with energy efficient windows, that therefore there's less fossil fuel burned because there's less air loss, all of which I think most of us would agree is a good thing. While we cannot require it, I am trying to make it more visible in some of this language that it's an option for you if that's what you want to do as a homeowner.
Yeah, I think in terms of consciousness raising, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
More of an awareness thing.
Okay. Are there any questions or concerns about this? So let's stay on this topic for just a few more minutes, because one of the comments in the survey was, and please keep in mind, some of this is probably not exactly factual, even from the person that I had 1980s PVC windows, and I was told I couldn't replace them because they are historic. So what I'd like the board to think about, and look at page 51 of the document, which is not here. Well, here it is a little bit. Yes, page 51. Thank you, Margaret. If somebody, I don't think Stephanie's told me that there is not such a thing as PVC windows in 1980, but you get the idea. They have some sort of plasticky type window and they would want to be able to replace it. They feel in the past they were told they could not. I personally don't quite get that. If someone was trying to replace it with a style that was compatible and matched our compatibility matrix for material, be it wood or aluminum clad wood or whatever, can't remember them all. I think this standard would allow that. But because windows are such a confusing point, I just am dwelling on this a little bit with the board.
And I'll just say, with that comment, we don't know who told them that. A lot of the rumor mill in Hillsborough, if your neighbor tells you you can't take out your windows, then people take that as fact. So just keep that in mind. What we really need to do here is just clarify the position of the board. We're not going to be able to stop people from making up all kinds of stuff and hearing all kinds of stuff. But I can guarantee they did not hear that from staff.
Yeah, and may or may not have heard it from the board. And so this is a place where I think some of those FAQs could really help respond to the survey comments, Will, and provide education in a, you can generalize the question a bit and then write some good answers that would help people. Now, I've italicized under the proposed wording, and that's only so that I call it out. Historic single pane windows should be replaced with contemporary double pane windows only when other methods to assure their energy efficiency are not feasible. So the former wording was, and it doesn't come across, that was a recommendation, and I can keep the maroon text, but I can't keep the formatting in this document. Said, avoid replacing historic single pane windows with contemporary double pane windows. And again, this is one of the big things, is that italicized language too open? I mean, I'm trying to walk that line between respecting what we need to respect as far as historic preservation and signaling an openness. So if you've already tried to, I think, Stephanie, you gave me an example of a case where the windows were too far gone. Everything was deteriorated. There wasn't enough fabric, shall we call it, left for those to be restored. In those cases, when all other, when other methods can't revive them, then you could replace them with a contemporary double pane window. But in the meantime, you should be trying to caulk and weather strip and do those things.
In addition to italics, maybe we should bold.
Well, actually, the italics I wasn't even going to do there because that signals recommendation. I just put it on italics to help me remember to talk about it tonight. So I'm happy to mark it in any way you think would be helpful there. But this would be how the standard would read in the final document.
It's just the only when other, that phrase, it really needs to be lit up somehow to let people know. You better try this other. No, it is recommended that you try this other stuff first before you decide to pull the windows out and throw them in the landfill.
Well, that's another question then, Virginia. Do you think that this sentence should return to being a recommendation rather than part of the standard?
Oh. I'm reading.
In my opinion, I do like that it's open and that it encourages the option. If all other options fail, then going with the more environmentally appropriate choice, I think, is a good one. And it's good to have that, explicitly stated in the document.
Yeah, that's part of a lot of how I'm trying to address some of these comments from the community is to call out language that makes it more visible and clear that there are options here because they may have been too, hidden before. So Eric, with that thought, would you make that a recommendation or would you leave it as part of the standard? I suspect if Megan were here, she would tell me that should be must if it's a standard. And I wasn't ready to go there.
I can see that.
So I wrote it in italics and I wrote should. So I need you guys to kind of weigh in. You may have seen Bob say, yes, it should be must.
I mean, to me, should is a recommendation, must is a standard. That's very simplified, but it kind of reads like a recommendation the way it's written right now.
Yeah, so we can leave it as a recommendation or we can change it to must and make it part of the standard. I've also added language up here in the top that talks about if the original window was previously replaced, the new replacement window, because original gets very confusing for everybody. Yeah. It should be energy efficient and be compatible with the architectural style of the building and the district. I mean, as far as, as long as they want to put in a window that suits, a craftsman to a craftsman kind of thing, it's probably okay.
Good. I'm good with must. Yeah, I'm good with it being a standard to install energy efficient as a standard. Yeah.
I vote for changing it back to Roman from italics and using must.
Okay. Could you make that change, Margaret? Do we have we're going to vote on these at the end, but if there's, thank you. So that is how the final new standard would read. Okay. I'm going to move on then. Yes, Bob.
That doesn't read right to me. Historic single pane windows must be replaced with contemporary double pane windows.
When?
Only when other. So.
Okay, help me.
Maybe you flip it. Maybe you flip it and say, when methods to assure energy efficiency are not feasible, historic single pane windows must be replaced with contemporary double pane windows.
Well, don't we, in that case, don't we want to say historic single pane windows may be replaced with contemporary double pane windows only when?
I've been sitting here wondering if may was the better word.
I'm fine with may.
I think that is more accurate from a language standpoint because this is a conditional
Right,
idea here. If, then.
right.
Mhm.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Oh.
Okay. With that, those great improvements. Thank you. Let's,
One more point.
okay.
When other methods to assure their energy efficiency are not feasible, the one piece that's missing here is that if they're deteriorated beyond repair, meaning they're not operable, people need to have the option to replace them. And the building inspections department, of course, will require a double pane window. So you may want to just add hold on, let me read for a second. Historic single pane windows may be replaced with contemporary double pane windows only when other methods to assure their operation or energy efficiency. Something, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not always about the energy efficiency. It's also about the condition of the window. So.
Okay.
Functionality or operation or.
Because otherwise, anyone who decides they don't want single pane windows anymore could say they're not energy efficient.
Exactly.
Period.
It really has more to do. I mean, the way that I've seen it worded in other places, it would say something like replace single pane windows with double pane windows only when deteriorated beyond repair.
Well,
Yeah, you have to have a condition caveat in there.
I think we have that standard already above this standard. This is about substitution, not replacement. I gotta go look at that real quick.
Sorry, not to belabor it, but
No, it's
Why don't you just add the double pane thing to the second sentence? If original window has been previously replaced, or if the new replacement window, instead of should be energy efficient, you could just say must be a double pane or should be a double pane window or something of comparable energy efficiency.
that's going to be required anyway. If you replace a window, you're required to put a double pane window in now.
Okay.
so we've already said that you have to retain and preserve them. We have to that contribute to the character of the district, that contribute to the character of the building. You're supposed to repair with all this stuff. You're supposed to replace in kind any portion that's damaged or deteriorated beyond repair, provide evidence on the condition of the window, including the opinion of a restoration expert. That's already there. This is number 6, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So that, I don't know. I'm not sure writing in committee is a great plan, but if we can say that we'll continue to refine this wording, if we have the permission of the board for the spirit of what is addressed here. Because I don't know that all trying to write it. And I welcome anybody taking hands to keys and typing something better and sending that through.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's really hard to rewrite it on the fly, get everything in there.
Okay. So maybe Virginia, you will help me with this later?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
You have to email me and remind me.
Oh, I will.
Otherwise, I won't remember.
I will hound you if that's an equivalent word for remind. Okay.
You know where to find me.
Yeah. All right. So with your permission on Windows, we'll move to the other area, which was a very prominent area in the responses of the community, was understanding how sustainable technologies such as solar panels could be incorporated. And what our standards have said is that based on the last discussion we had with the board, was that solar panels, turbines, geothermal heating, green roofs are encouraged. So this, excuse me, let me stop, erase all that for a second. This is on the considerations. And again, trying to make it more visible to the community about the openness of the board to consider these technologies. This is just some revised wording to try to say that they can be in the district upon consideration by the commission when their physical and physical impacts are consistent with the historic and architectural character of the property and the district. Now, there's really no difference between what's there and what's there on the second one, except that the green technologies are called out a bit more, listed, instead of just leaving it as one example. I will highlight that this is a page that is very, very full, and I'm not sure that the formatting will allow us to add this much language, but perhaps tweaking it a bit here and a bit there, elsewhere in the paragraph, we can fit something like this in if the board feels that it's valuable to add. Again, all we're doing is adding the words about wind turbines, geothermal heating, and green roofs. And we're saying the words that they're encouraged, as long as you can do it where it doesn't impact the district, go for it. The building or the district.
Well, I think.
History on this comment, and how did it come in late, or how were we, is this from the community or somebody on staff or somebody on the commission?
There's been a lot of feedback from the community, which we had already provided to Hill Studio, and which they attempted to address by the paragraph you see on the left. I'm just trying to take it, there was nothing specific from the community, Will, about all of these things, but all of these things are addressed in the standards. And so I'm just trying to make it a bit more complete in the considerations. And I'm trying to say the word encouraged with, basically I'm saying encouraged with conditions.
I think that you can get the meaning across if you just use one example, such as solar panels, because such as implies that there are a lot more possibilities. That
Okay.
you're calling out one.
Even something like
and I
solar
like
panels and
encourage.
green
Yeah.
that's it, doesn't.
Okay, so if we took out those other ones, which we may have to do anyway because of space, and what were you saying, Virginia, about encouraged?
Well, yeah. So if you, so it would be technologies such as solar panels are encouraged. I like that.
Okay.
That makes us sound good. And can be installed with consideration. I guess that's the right word.
It's approval, right?
Yeah, I was going to say permission, but approval is a better word.
Well, I think I think it's consideration because we have to consider those aspects of it and then decide if it can be approved.
Right. Okay.
That's why I think that's,
Right.
yeah. We're considering their physical and physical impact. Like we would consider whether a green roof would add too much weight to an old building that might not sustain itself, or whatever. So the standards themselves address where solar panels can go, where wind turbines can go, where green roofs can be placed. This is just the introductory section and trying to, again, set the tone of an openness to these types of technologies.
Yeah. Good. Like I said, it makes us sound good.
And we have to be good too, but I'm trying to get this to reflect some of the changes that were made in the standards to accommodate these things.
Okay.
If we're okay with that, let's move on. These are the real heavy ones, guys. Okay. On this same page, there is a picture of a storm door and a picture of storm windows. one of the things that Justin and I discussed before he left, in order to, again, call out to the community and green energy people, well, anyway, and highlight is just to put a box on this page and to fit it on this page, which is so full, something would have to go. So I'm saying remove the picture of the storm door and then put this language in a bolded box that says that these technologies are rapidly evolving. We encourage their appropriate use, and we recognize the importance of enhancing energy efficiency, and we commit to regularly review these standards to assure they reflect the best practices when proposed for installation in the historic district. Again, just another big stamp that the board will stay on top of this.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that?
I like it.
I'm going to be Virginia here for a second.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that sustainable technology is a rapidly evolving field,
Okay.
because otherwise we have technologies are a field.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Good work, Bob.
Thank you.
Y'all go, because it's not me. I want to say too that in my effort to expand my understanding and knowledge throughout this process for the past 8 months, I've done a lot of reading of different guidelines in different districts, and recently came across something on a website called Sustainable Development Code, which is basically a group that tries to capture examples of code and ordinances around the country that address issues related to sustainable development in communities. And they have a chapter, if you will, on using renewable energy in historic districts, and they summarize the issues, and then they cite examples from different communities and how they have incorporated those in their district. And in comparing our language of this standard to the examples they cite from several communities, and I can name a few, I think Las Cruces, New Mexico, and Bay City, Michigan, Newberry, Florida, Breckenridge, Colorado, Township in New Jersey, East Greenwich Township. Those are just a few. Our language was consistent with what they were showing on that website. So it was just something else that kind of reassured me that I think we're pretty much in the right place with these standards with respect to what is, other historic districts are doing with respect to sustainable development. And I just make that available for y'all's knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, go on to page 65. This is something when I compared the standard that we have, which is standard number 7, and the minor work on page 140. So one of the community feedbacks was to allow roof ridge vents. Now, the minor work already said everything that's in black here on the right-hand side under minor work, but it did not mention low profile roof ridge vents. And so Justin and I were saying, well, we let all these other kinds of vents go on roofs. Would it be appropriate to allow low profile roof ridge vents to be a minor work? The standard said you could install them as long as they didn't destroy historic roofing materials and details. So I proposed that the minor work says it not impact historic roofing and details. If there's historic roofing, it would need to come before the board, not be a minor work. And then Stephanie highlighted that roof ridge vents should match the roof materials. So that language has been added both to the standard and to the minor work to make them consistent. So if people are comfortable with the fact that staff could allow low profile roof ridge vents when it doesn't destroy historic roofing and it matches the roof materials that they have, then we're good to go. Sound good? Okay. We addressed another community item, another community feedback item. Again, the same thing. This is in utilities, I believe. This is around air conditioning. And the minor work that we had already said that they could go in on side or rear elevations. The standard said it was not appropriate to install them on front and conspicuous side elevations. So I just made the minor work be revised to say inconspicuous side. If it's going to be a side elevation that staff use as conspicuous, conspicuous, it would come to the board. You guys have looked at this way too long, I have to tell you. Is that acceptable to the board, that language change? The absence of a comment, I see some head nods, so we'll move on.
I think that's good.
Okay, again, as I told you at the beginning, I tried to reconcile the final language with the minor works, and these are some of the examples of small things that I found. On page 71, which is the introduction to section 5, which is new construction and additions, there is a sentence near the end of that paragraph that says successful applications basically are encouraged. Well, that isn't very logical. So of course we encourage successful applications, but they can't make, it's not quite the wording we wanted. So I've suggested we revise that sentence to just say applications for new construction additions are encouraged and are most successful when communication with town staff occurs early in the design process, which was really the intent of what we were saying. The sentence after this follows to say, if you have a really big project, you should bring it at the conceptual stage to the board as well, which is something we have advocated hard for. So I hope that clarification is satisfactory to the board.
It was very good.
Thank you. Did I get one right? My English is okay on that one. Okay, so on page 88, we are trying to add, Candace, I've been talking to Candace about adding a picture of a very modern addition to a traditional home to this page. And she's done a couple of pictures of the Hallman addition there on Tryon and Wake, West Tryon and Wake. It's a challenging addition to get a very clear picture of, but we have one that's not bad. I did approach the painters about trying to take a picture of their glass box on the back of their house. It would be very challenging to photograph that, and they're not particularly keen to have their house and address listed in the document based on some experiences with another thing that was published about their house. So I would propose we add a picture of the Hallman house that Candace has provided.
Yeah, I actually reshot that, and I think we have one that'll be suitable.
Yeah, it's from the front and kind of looks down the side, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we would add that picture to that page. It's going to take some manipulation to make it fit, I think, but I'm hopeful we can get that addition in there. The other picture is the picture of the Berry House addition, which we awarded a preservation award for. So that's a picture. That's the other picture that shows. So there's two contrasting approaches shown there. If there's no objection, let's move on. Okay, Will. With a lot of work, Will and Justin, I didn't want to copy the thing, have proposed this language to be on the consideration page of site features and plantings. The only change that I've made here, Will, and the reason that it's in red, well, one, it's in red because it would be a link when we put it there, and two, the numbering that we originally proposed has changed a little bit in the way that the minor works are numbered. So I've updated this to reflect the current numbering. of the final document. So this will be exactly the wording you and Will agreed. This continues to the next 2 pages because there's a couple more paragraphs, or the next page anyway. So all of this would be the proposal. And I want to be sure, Will, that you're satisfied with this.
Yeah, I looked at it earlier when you sent it out, so thank you. And it's what Justin wrote up.
Yeah, it is. Okay. If there are any other comments? If not,
I'm so late to the game in this. I really apologize if you guys have already covered it, but if someone wants to take out a healthy tree in order to build an addition, is that allowed? I mean,
it's not a minor work. This is
Sure.
A lot of this is about what's a minor work. So because the addition is coming before the board, that's
Okay.
part of that application.
Okay, sorry, I can't see the top of this column. Margaret, could you scroll down? Okay,
Yeah.
so this is section 6 site features.
This is the
And
standard for site features and plannings, and it's basically discouraging tree removal except when absolutely necessary.
So the sentence that caught my eye says removal of healthy mature trees can occur only after all efforts to preserve them have failed. And my question is, if this is on section 6 as a standard or a consideration, is that contradictory when people need to take out a tree to build a house or an addition?
No, because the consideration isn't a governance thing. This is just a context setting paragraph. The standard itself would govern what you can do.
Okay, and I'll revisit those. I'm sorry. And again, I'm not nearly as familiar with all of the wording as you guys are. So
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah. Okay. And really, it's kind of highlighting what has to happen in the minor work here at the bottom portion, which is that if you want to take out a big tree, you got to have arborist certification that you need to take it out. Justin frequently points out to us, Stephanie, that nobody wants to remove a big, healthy tree. It's really about
Hackberries, actually. We've had lots of applications to remove black walnuts and hackberries in this town that were healthy and mature, and they have to come to the commission for review because there aren't any arborists that will write that letter. We've been requiring letters from arborists for that for a while. This just clarifies it, and I do think it's helpful language.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it goes on. It's more, there's another paragraph here and another paragraph here. And it just clarifies that if it's a clear and immediate threat, it can come out. This is all in the consideration section.
Was there much room on that page, Jill? Do you think that's going to be able to make it on without many edits?
I think so. I don't know. I don't have any idea. There's not that much change to what was already there, Will. So I'm hoping it will fit on. Okay, this is the sustainability of minor. Okay, so this is minor works. We already had a minor work about when solar panels could be placed on roofs. And we may all have forgotten that, but it was there. So this is how it read. And in going over these with Stephanie in advance of this meeting, she pointed out to me that while it reads public right of way, the standard reads street, and that the public right of way can be quite large in some places of the historic district, and therefore maybe that's not what we want to say because we don't even know where that is, and so maybe we just don't want it to be easily visible from the street. If you're comfortable with that, we'll move on.
That's a good change.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So just happened to catch that one with Stephanie's help this afternoon. So I don't believe there's anything else at the end. Yes. So those are the changes that I would propose to this final document in order to make it align more, be more consistent within itself, and to respond to some of the community feedback with respect to windows and sustainable energy use in the district. That's what the primarily is going on there. Is there anything that anyone else would like to propose to be changed to this document as you saw it this week? And do we have your permission that if we need to tweak them a little bit to edit them for space, we can do so in order to have the considerations fit in the space?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to keep as many images as we can because I think they're really helpful.
Yeah. And the only one that I'm proposing removing is on that sustainability page, only because it was such a theme of the community feedback that
Yeah.
something had to go, and I decided a picture of a storm door could go compared to
Yeah.
statement that we needed to make. We have storm windows, an excellent example of storm windows, but we let the door go.
It's a mighty fine storm door, but I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
So, okay, if that is the case, then I would like to make a motion to adopt these with these changes, if there's no further discussion.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to make a very specific, wait, before you second that, hold that second. I'm going to read a very specific motion
Okay.
for the record. And if Bob or Stephanie or Margaret, this needs to be tweaked further, please speak up. But I move to adopt the Hillsborough Design Standards to be effective for the HDC meeting 6 October 2021, with the condition that the items identified and agreed at this meeting are addressed, and with the condition that the final editing of this document is performed by the Hillsborough Public Information Office, consistent with North Carolina State Statute 160D-947, Section C, which gives us the authority to adopt such standards. Basically, parentheses to you guys. How does that sound, guys?
Sounds good.
Right, Bob? Maybe
The
not.
the only suggestion or question I have has, in your motion, you had the phrase, I think, to be effective for the October 6th HDC meeting.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think we should state a more specific effective date, and here's why. Because the law is that when someone submits an application today and you change the rules tomorrow, that applicant can decide which set of rules they want to follow.
Oh,
So I think we really ought to, it could be effective immediately, or it can be effective on, September 8th or something like that, but a date specific.
Okay, that's very helpful, Bob. I guess my question is, does it have to be, do the editing changes need to be made and the document published before we call it an effective date? Or can we say effective immediately even when these changes and that things still have to be made before it can be published on the website?
Well, here's the question. How long will it take for them to be changed and published? What can we say comfortably?
Well, Margaret said she can do most of these tomorrow, but then we have to get, we don't know yet from Hill Studio about the new pictures, and we don't know how long the Public Information Office would like to have. It's a big document.
yeah.
Right, but I would think that those edits, the adding of a couple pictures and not to diminish what PIO is going to do in any stretch of that's not going to change the substance.
No, it's not.
PIO, I mean, they're going to be doing things like that are like more like Scrivener's errors that are not substantive, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think, Margaret, if you can really have the text changes tomorrow, I mean, you can make it effective on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, that would actually help us a lot in reviewing minor works,
Right.
because those continue to roll in. And the sooner we know what the new rules are, to the extent that they're changing, would be very helpful.
Right.
Okay. I'm happy to rephrase my motion with an effective
Okay.
date of the 3rd of September. I think that's the correct date.
Yeah, that's Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, then let me try this again. I move to adopt the Hillsborough Design Standards to be effective 3 September 2021, with the condition that the identified items agreed at this meeting are addressed, and with the condition that the final editing of the document is performed by the Public Information Office, consistent with North Carolina State Statute 160D-947, Section C. Thank you, Stephanie, for that reference.
Second.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Eric. Then a roll call vote. All in favor of adopting these standards? So I'll call you one by one. Virginia,
Aye.
Candace,
Aye.
Will,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Max,
Aye.
Jill, I. The motion carries 6-0.
Yay. Good work.
Thank you all very much. Allison, we probably have a couple other little things to cover, but thank you very much for all of
Okay,
your
thank you
guidance
all.
on this. And I'll let
Okay,
you
and
go.
I'll get back to you hopefully tomorrow about when the 2 graphics can be updated.
That'd be great. Thank you.
But
Okay,
before
thank you all.
Before Allison hangs up, I just wanted to take just a minute to congratulate you all. You addressed the project objectives. You finished on time and on budget. The funding partner is satisfied. It's time for this document to get out and get used by some new eyes and apply it in the real world and see how it goes. I've rewritten a lot of documents in my life. They don't always ever feel like they're done, and that's okay. This is a very big job. Well done. So pat yourselves on the back. Y'all worked hard. This was a big project, and celebrate that for a minute. And I include the consultant in that, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. We couldn't have done it without all the working with everybody, especially Jill and Justin. So thank you all.
Thank you, guys. And I thank you, Margaret, for sharing those sentiments. It has been a big project, and this is not a static document. As we've said earlier this evening, as new things approach the board and you see that some of the standards are not crafted perhaps the way they would be useful, you have the opportunity to address that and update these. And we think now that we can make those wording changes quickly and republish the document in very close to real time as the board makes that up. So that'll be a huge benefit to the community as we go through this. So I want to also say, with that, I want to come back to your earlier question, Will. When you've heard about some of the changes that are proposed and why they were proposed, are you more satisfied, or do you feel more could be done to address the community feedback? I know you don't know exactly what it was, but you'll have to trust me that I've summarized. And Candace will have to be my check that I have covered off the things that we heard a lot about.
Yeah.
So do you think that with some videos and some FAQs and maybe a press release that we're because I agree with you, the community needs to hear that they were heard.
Oh, that's a question directly to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't doubting it at all. I honestly wasn't up on the process, and I just wanted to, ask the question before I approve something. So you totally satisfied me just describing what you all did.
Okay, thank you. I wish that the survey had been organized a little differently. We used a free version of the tool, so it didn't make some things. Well, I don't want it to be, I wanted it to be anonymized. It would have been nice to know if we were reading one person's comments throughout, or, you know, or 10 people's comments, and we just didn't have that ability with the tool that we used. So again, thank you all, this board, tremendously for all of the input you've made on these documents and all of this. It's really been great. With that, I want to recognize Candace. This is her final meeting. Not only has she contributed in so many ways across the years to this board, but in this document, she served on the small committee and she took wonderful photographs that really improved the document. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for my certificate.
Candace, Mark said to me tonight that he thinks that you've done 6 terms total.
It's actually 9 years.
So
That's long.
It was two extended terms.
I see. Well, that is very impressive.
Stephanie knows.
Yeah.
Stephanie remembers.
Yeah.
Thanks. And on the same token, Jill will be leaving us.
Yep.
And you did an enormous amount of work on this one project, and we are all eternally grateful for all the many hours you put into this.
Seriously, Jill, you bird dogged it.
It was, you know, it was time consuming, but it was also very educational and very interesting to work on this. So I benefited from it, and I've benefited from serving on this board with all of you. So I appreciate that. Learned a lot.
I think you've done a very good job, Jill. You really have been good at being kind to the applicants when we couldn't give them what they wanted. I mean, you've been great at all the other stuff too, but I especially noticed that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And one more small thing. Do we have any update on the Axel Bank enforcement? No response. So Virginia, I'm going to propose that you and I get together, not only to work on that little section there, but also I thought I would try to pull together some of the little threads that are ongoing and make sure I have something written down to share with you.
Okay.
The next meeting, Virginia is our vice chairman. The next meeting, you'll elect officers. So I just want some transition of ongoing projects, thoughts tied to Virginia to pass.
I'm the institutional memory, y'all.
That's what I call her.
Stephanie is the ultimate institutional memory.
Yeah.
Yes,
Jill and I are going to the Bahamas now.
Yeah.
Good.
Stephanie, you have your hand there.
Yeah, I just, you guys have done such a great job on this project, and it's a really rough, hard time to lose Jill and Candace right now. So you're gonna have to bear with me. One of our strategies this month is going to, for the new members who will be appointed by the town board at the September 13th meeting, is to actually start their terms on October 1st, which allows Candace and Jill to continue, like their terms will officially end at the end of September. If you don't mind, Candace, I hadn't actually checked that with you, but you know, I figured you would stay on. And that way I can, if I, you know, as questions come up about certain applications and code enforcement and stuff like that, we still officially have your terms running through the end of September, and then the new members' terms will begin on October 1st. So I just wanted to note that. And the rest of you are just gonna have to give me a break over the next couple months, because I'm doing my job too, supposedly at the same time. So bear with us. We will do the best we can to help through this transition. And hopefully the planning department will be able to hire someone very soon that will be able to really dedicate the time that it takes to do this job well.
That was a segue into something I was going to ask Stephanie. I'm not familiar with the county hiring process. Are we looking at like 6 months with Justin's spot vacant, or less or more? And are they desirable positions? Like, will you get a lot of applicants, or is it a job not many people want?
So the town will post the position very soon, hopefully in the next few days. We tend to have a pretty good applicant pool, but I will tell you that just in the world of government workers right now, there's a lot of movement happening in every jurisdiction. People are moving around. That could be related to COVID opportunities. There just seems to be a lot of shakeup across the state of North Carolina right now. So, but I do think we tend to get very large applicant pools, and which is good. That's good for us. It will hopefully be filled by the end of the calendar year at the latest. That's what we're aiming for. It could be sooner if we get very lucky.
Nice. And was there an open code enforcement position still, or did that get filled yet? Do you know?
We do not have a dedicated code enforcement position, but code enforcement is done by the planning department staff.
Right, the other position that we have open is the planning technician.
Mhm.
And so we have that position and the planner position. And I think in the new organization structure, the planner will actually be the code enforcement officer. And the planning tech is more that first welcoming, nice, warm, fuzzy face. And the planner has a little bit more serious role and since that person is the staff to the Historic District Commission and will be involved in the details of review of these construction projects, it seemed a little bit better for that person to be the code enforcement officer.
Is the planning tech position been recruited and filled, and it's just a matter of that person starting, or is it still a search that's ongoing?
We made our first offer, and the person had already taken another position, so we're trying with option number 2, and we'll see how that goes. And if that person doesn't accept, then we'll re-advertise that along with the planner position.
Okay.
But we had a pool of, I want to say, 16 candidates in 2 weeks for that position, and we quickly narrowed it to 6 and then kind of struggled to narrow it to 4 to do interviews. So it wasn't a bad pool given how many. I mean, it's almost like 3 to 5 jobs a week are being posted on the statewide listserv. So Stephanie is not joking when she says everybody is shifting. And it goes through periods like that. That happens. And this just happens to be one of those periods. So that can be good and bad.
Yeah. We'll hope for the good side of that. All right. If there's no further business this evening, I want to thank you all again for all of your work this evening, all of your work for the past 8 to 9 months on this project. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, Virginia, second?
Second.
Good. Candace, your last motion. All right, roll call vote, guys. All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Virginia?
Aye.
Candace?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Max?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Good work.